Oh, starting La Bataille de Leipzig from Viva l'Empereur, not to be confused with the Marshall Enterprises one. And yeah, this is a big guy. I'm not getting into my intro right now. It's joy time. I should bring her here. So actually, I think I just found it. No. So, first of all, there are counters that don't seem to be here now. I believe this was unpunched when I got it. And I had all the counter sheets and everything. I looked for errata. WebGrognerds doesn't have the existence of the game as far as I can tell. And BGG has nothing about it. I know some people have played this, so I don't know how or whether they figured out what happened. But setup for this thing is obviously a mess. First of all, I'm in my living room now because the loft isn't, I could probably get this set up in the loft, but it would be a little too tight. Now it's pretty fucking tight here too. But I'm a little bit more comfortable. The only problem is lighting. At nighttime, it's not like lighting is good up there, and I would have trouble with this big a map. But when nighttime comes, I only have that light really, and I can bring some more down. I have some outlets which work, some which don't, and maybe get 2 or 3 lights around this, and it might end up pretty well. But I'm really crowding my room out with this shit. This is the biggest game I've attempted. My first game, back when I was out in Phoenix, that I think I videoed it all, certainly the first war game that I did, was the full 7 days battle, which was 9 maps. This is 10. The first thing you notice when you start setting up the maps is, wow, they actually kind of don't align. You get shit like this going on, and it's just like they all had borders around them, so you had to cut the borders, and the maps don't quite align. It also, even though this is a fairly, it's just a rectangular shape for the most part, I had some difficulty figuring out how to link the north and south part. Nothing in the rules tells you which way you align the maps. Like, it would be nice if there was a little sketch that said maps, they're all numbered, maps 1 through 5 on top, 6 through 10 right below that. I was left with, when I first started aligning them, this wasn't clear that this road was this. Look at this weird jagged link there. Moreover, some of the stuff that had to be cut, I had to cut actual map off. So this had to be cut more, because the overlap did not include this road running through here. And it runs under there too. And you can see this is, I did cut this, but not as far as I needed to, because this map is pushed in just a little bit more, and so I actually really had to cut off this entire hex if I wanted to. But I can remember that road's there, I guess. It's got the little trees. That's the only way that you can tell that those highways or whatever are there. So anyway, as I was setting up my units, this time sorting and putting the units on these sheets, and you have like 3 army sheets for the coalition and 2 for the French. This is a fucking huge battle, not just the size of the maps, but lots and lots of units. I ran into a bit of an issue with, I think, this force here, which is called the Russian Reserve. The first few units are Prussian, and I found, I couldn't read that this was Russian Reserve because my photocopy was kind of bad, but I penned it in just so I could know that. So I was expecting this whole thing to be Prussian forces. It turns out it's not. It looks like most of these are Russian, these counters don't exist. However, there's a bunch of counters that do exist. Well, maybe they exist over in the French forces. Because again, it's, you know, you got these weird colors and stuff. And I think these are poles or something. And since both sides use the same numbering system, like they both start at 1, well, sort of, kind of. We may do a pre-video because I think I'm going to blow a gasket trying to set this shit up. But anyway, these guys aren't there. There's a bunch of Russians here that don't exist on these sheets. They don't correlate with the ones there. I tried looking up the names, and they're not the same units. These guys are probably from an optional thing. And we got this other 000 unit. Never saw one of them before. Just, again, totally not anywhere. And then the Congreve rockets, which I think are attached to the Swedes. Trying to find them. They're also in the pile of, I don't have them on these setup sheets. Well, not setup sheets, but these record sheets, which may make sense. Here they are. They're only one step, so maybe that's not that big a deal, and maybe I'll be told to set them up somewhere, or they'll come in as reinforcements or something, but they're not on the sheets. And what finally triggered me into, okay, screw it, I've got to get to this, is because, like some of the other ones, I think this was the, was it the Jena? I think that was the one where I ran into this problem again. And it's just such an idiotic thing. I'm looking at my setup. The Prussian Second Corps of Kleist within 3 hexes around Coburn. Great. Well, with a couple of maps like Jena, it's hard enough to find a town. I am going to be walking around this huge map. Ooh, there's Breitenfeld. Looking for these towns, and, you know, there's just no fucking reason why you wouldn't put hex numbers on the maps. The one thing that I have to say, I do find the components for this one a little bit better than what Legion puts out. The paler colored maps, the artwork on them seems, it is, you know, it's minimalist, but I actually think that I'm going to like it better. Most of the units I found more readable than in the Legion games one, except for these guys. These guys have been the problem all along. These are basically invisible. They're printed, I don't know where the fuck they are. I think they're these guys. I'm not sure, but yeah, they're you can't see. I mean, you can if you zoom in with the camera or whatever, but I mean, this is not just my eyes and the lighting and whatever. These, I don't care who you are, unless you can put it to like 8 times magnification. If you've got bionic eyes, you can do it. The backs of these, I think, are also problematic, but maybe not as bad. That's a little bit more readable. I can get that at, what, 3 times? But yeah, I mean, there's just a complete failure there. Anyway, I'm expecting that this will take one hell of a long time to even get things anywhere near where they're supposed to be, just because I'm going to have to wander around the map and look for these fucking town names. This is just not the way, you know, nobody could have been handed this game and play tested it from the start and not said, you know, you really need hex numbers on this one. I can't even imagine why hex numbers aren't used in the series. Some people have suggested some things like, well, it means that you won't do as precise an order writing. Well, yeah, okay, but I want to go somewhere in between these hills. What do I write? You know? I mean, I can write vague orders with hex numbers included. I can't write vague orders to go to places that are both unnamed and unnumbered and everything else. The only way I can get anything in place there is to like use some kind of counters or something. Yeah. So one of the things I did want to say was, and I may forget if I hold off on it, was this is sort of what I think of when I think of a monster game. Big enough that it is going to impact your life. You know? Other than 7 days, the only thing that came at all close for me was Terrible Swift Sword. That was the only three mapper that I had played. I consider things like, I think, I'm trying to think if EU and Le Grand Guerre, I think of them as two maps, but they may actually be more that fit together. And then recently the Offensive à Outrance was reasonably large. I don't remember how many maps that was. But I think it was like 4 or 5, you know. At the small end, but still a monster. But for me, you know, if it's less than 2 maps, it just doesn't count. Now, for this series, it's a little unfair because these hexes are big. But anyway, you may not hear from me for a long time, and you won't hear from me here because until I'm kind of done with the setup at least, and probably everything else, there's not a whole hell of a lot for me to say. Partial success on this. I found Crowburn. It's even spelled the same. I had some worries that like maybe it's Crowburn in here and like Groberg or something like that. There's something along those lines. You know, that's a lot easier when you're really familiar with the terrain, or at least the language that the terrain's named in. Not saying English, like in England would necessarily be particularly easy. But anyway, this is just pre-setup, right? I'm just putting these pieces there to give me an idea of where there is. I had expected the coalition to be further east, but okay. This is not too bad. So I kind of worked my way, down the maps, and it was under some paper. There's no question of that. But now I come to something that's inexplicable. Russian Corps of Gorchakov. Okay, Gorchakov, I know him. He's not in this game, that I can tell. That's the beginning of the problem. This is St. Priest. There's nothing completely out of there, but let's keep going. And Württemberg under Wittgenstein and Russian cavalry under Palin. I don't think there's a Palin commander. And Württemberg, okay, that would kind of indicate maybe some of these Württembergian, well, maybe these are like Allied German units, although I think they're like Hesse-Homburg is there. Maybe this is the command. We got Hesse-Homburg Reserve Corps. I think I'm just going to have to hold off on trying to figure out what this is until I have other stuff. But, that means I have to get all the reinforcements plotted somewhere in order to figure out what's not accounted for in the game. Setup should never be this hard. It should never. Oh, I have this guy, Eric Guy Leipzig. He might be French, actually. Probably is. He's got an Italian-sounding name. I don't seem to have him as a corps commander. So yeah, I don't know who he is or where he's for. But I mean, you know, I've seen a couple of people who have indicated they've played it. And I have no idea, you know. I didn't see anything about this kind of trials and tribulations. I don't know, am I the only person who, like, suffers? Does everybody else have, like, some kind of magical insight into this? I don't see anything, you know, about those counters, whatever, you know, posted. I can't imagine how somebody could play. I'm talking about people who've played the Grand Campaign, and I just can't imagine how somebody can play without leaving some indication of the problem. Now, for me, it may just end up on the video, which wouldn't help anyone anyway. But yeah, I got, oh, there's Kolnberg. That's what I thought maybe they meant, you know. And I'm left with that kind of problem if I can't find something, you know, and maybe with using units that don't belong to the game or whatever. So in a way, it's kind of nice to know. I had this feeling of, oh, well, everything's just gone downhill since, like, the designer moved away from the Grognard publications, because the AWE ones are hideous looking, and they're smaller games, over to the Legion stuff. Maybe Waterloo, maybe I don't remember what went wrong with Waterloo in setup. I seem to remember there were problems, and so I'm thinking I just kind of glossed over them in my head. So I'm guessing there's been this level of indiscipline, and, you know, it's in the base rules, right? The same kind of flaws. But it really hurts when you're trying to set it up, because the base rules, you know, if I can't figure out what the base rules are, I can make shit up. It's a little bit more painful to me to say, oh, I'll just make up where these pieces go, or I'll just make up which pieces go here. I don't know. Oh, God. And I was hoping to avoid having to dig through the French, but who knows? So the Wittgenstein mystery is solved, actually. Russian Corps of Gorchakov. I was expecting to find Gorchakov as a commander. And Württemberg, doesn't sound Russian, but okay, under Wittgenstein, and Russian cavalry under Palin within 3 hexes around Grimy Gulch here. So Wittgenstein has 2 units under his command, cavalry and artillery, and a Russian corps. That Russian corps has 1 corps Gorchakov, 2 corps Württemberg. Subcommanders who aren't represented in the game, okay. And then Wittgenstein also has cavalry and artillery over here in a separate force, and it turns out that Palin is one of the commands there. And I found Grimy Gulch easily. All right, is the next one easy? Austrian 4th Corps under Clerical. That should be pretty easy to find. Basically what we're sitting with is 3 corps, more or less, for the coalition. And then the only other entry is sort of a command staff with Barclay de Tolly and Schwarzenberg and the 3 emperors that I can put wherever I like. The emperors don't command anything. I don't know what Schwarzenberg commands. Okay, they've got him and Barclay as both Army of Bohemia. I'm gonna have to understand the relationship there. I think Schwarzenberg's in charge, but we'll see. The rest is reinforcements, supposedly. I should be able to sit back on my laurels on that, right? Well, maybe. Were these part of it? The Prussian Corps of Kleist. Kleist is not this. This is Prussian Guard. I haven't gotten to them yet. They're the ones who have the pieces I cannot find. And then I'm going to start sorting the French next, I guess. Another option would be to sort the coalition as per their reinforcements. And there doesn't look like there's a whole lot, although it's somewhat deceptive because, you know, each of these is at least a corps. So we shall see. I see an army. The army of Poland comes in there. That's a big corps, essentially. Anyway, I'm going to also have to draw something up to cover this, assuming that there are turn and day markers. There usually are. If there aren't, I'll use tiny little things, I guess. I don't know. I may have an extra copy of that sheet. Yeah, I'm dragging my feet. I've been dragging my feet on this one for a long time. You know, it's something I really want to do, but it is fucking huge. Even this isn't trivial. Okay. I look at, okay, October 14th, nothing's going to come in. Great. October 15th, first thing is the Austrian Reserve Corps tells me nothing else here, right? Russian and Prussian Guards, this is the unit that's missing pieces. Austrian Reserve Corps, so what is that? Well, I searched through everything. I've got Russian Reserve, well, that's probably not it. I get to where Austrians start coming in, and the first thing I hit is the reserve. It's Hesse Homburg. It's not Austrian troops. This is Hesse Homburg. However, it's got an Austrian leader. You can tell it's Hesse Homburg because it's gray. And then, in addition to that, there is the Reserve Cavalry Artillery. And now these should be in this order because the Russian Reserve continues into here. Just, this is not quite as bad as it looks. So I think it's this, maybe with that, maybe not. Over in the Army of the North, well, got nothing called reserve there, so I feel fairly safe that it's not from that sheet. So the only thing that I think it can be is Hesse Homburg, probably with the Reserve Cavalry Artillery, but who knows. Left the slot, I've got space here for those extra Russians, and then I come down October 16th, the next day, 3 a.m., I guess, Rayuski Russian Grenadiers, units 150 through 157. That sounds vaguely familiar. Well, that is precisely the units that are missing. So they are indeed part of the game, or should be. What I'm going to do with them, I don't know. These things with their 7 morale are definitely not my Grenadiers. And numerically, they have not shown up anywhere. They may be hiding in the French pieces. I'll leave a slot for them there. I just do not know. Is it possible I swallowed them or something? I don't know. And again, I think, in fact, I'm fairly certain that this was unpunched. There might have been a couple units floating around in the box, but everything was there that I could tell. So I'm guessing that this is just lacking. So I'll skip over to this next one, which I should probably be able to do. Wrong pretty well. A little hitch here. Ostensaken is referred to here as Saken, which took me a while to find. But guess what? 150. How did, I don't know, I guess I had them set up here and position them with all the Russian units. Those are my extra units, and those are going into that slot, so that's sweet. I swear I looked through the Russians for that command, but I could not find it, and those are, you know, the morale should have told me. At this point, we have a couple of holes still, but we've gotten through the entirety of, oh good, the victory conditions are destroy the enemy army. I'm good with that, honestly. I am perfectly fine with that because we got the army morale levels, and otherwise we can kind of look and say and discuss it with ourselves as to, yeah, you know, maybe I got a little bit of an edge here because I got like 10% more losses on you or whatever. Okay, so what are the holes? We've got all the reinforcements that I could find. One hole is these artillery here, which are part of 167. That's over here, the Wittgenstein Cavalry and Artillery. I'm just going to give them to Wittgenstein. I think that's what's intended. Others, Blücher. Blücher's the army commander of the Army of Silesia. Nothing says that he comes in, and he's not in the setup. The first Army of Silesia unit to enter the board, I believe, is York's Prussians. Let's just take a look and make sure. Langeron, Austin Saxon, St. Priest, and I think that's it. Mirvelt is over here, I'm guessing. Yeah, in Bohemia. So I'm going to bring him in with York because the army commander really should be on the board if there's a corps on the board. Otherwise, you have to do some weird shit. Eregi, who's probably French. He sounds familiar to me, actually. The Congreve rockets. And the mystery Russian units, including this 00 and the command of the Tolstoy militia. This may be the Tolstoy militia. I will look about through other resources in the book to see when and if these things show up and what they should be. But they are not, none of these show up on the record tracks. Other things I have are dummies and such not. That's stuff that I'm just going to I'm not going to worry about too much. And I guess that means it's time to start dishing out the French. The French actually set up first, but my habit with games that have as free a setup as this does, as this system tends to, is I want to see where the enemy is. You know, so the first person to set up, I always set the second person's up first, just to give me an idea of what I'm facing, because the first person has enough disadvantages already. Okay, well, probably, you see I've already snuck one light down. I don't know how usable that's going to be. Got to move my table over here. You know, maybe I can weave around through there. Otherwise, I can pull them to the edges, but I think having one in the center would be really useful, and that's sort of my best light. I could actually assemble another one. I have at least one more of these guys. Yeah, I'm just babbling. You know, this is a fairly large game. Counter-wise, maybe not as much as, I don't know what the count is on these, as things like La Grande Guerre, or let's see, about 1,000 counters. Yeah, this is a little smaller. Le Grand Guerre or Europa Universalis. And those games take me a couple days to set up. Maybe counting. Nah. I was going to say counting tables, but not really. So I don't feel too bad at the pace I'm going so far, at least for setup. Another light, and you can see nighttime's not going to be easy. Even daylight is tricky, but another step forward, I deployed the French forces, mostly right up here facing where the coalition is going to be. There's some guys back in Leipzig, and they can go all the way back to Linden now. All the French units sorted. No further problems, except there's a whole bunch of additional units that are not on these sheets. Now, as with the Russian units that are not on the sheets, these are, I think, from what-if scenarios. I do have one iffy thing. This gun right here, if I can't figure out where it goes, I am going to put it with the rest of the independent units at Leipzig. Because basically, there might be a couple independents kicking around elsewhere. Oh, and also figured out this is where I can't remember his name. Origi. And yeah, that is in command of those independents over there. Additionally, Murat is the army commander on the board here. Napoleon will be coming on shortly, though. Looks like I gotta pull another tray down. So I'm gonna need basically a reinforcement tray for both commands, and then a tray for markers, probably including squares. There are no skirmishers in this game, but tons of these dummies, which I can use as them. And I can also include skirmishers. This may be the trick of mixing systems. I can include skirmishers from other versions, other sets of the game, because I think I'll need them. Now, I think is weird because the rules are a little different. This is an earlier edition, one earlier or so. And I have to look over that and see if there's anything funky there, because among other things, the way the counters look is a little bit different. But yeah, this is, we're getting there. We're getting there. I haven't deployed the French yet. This is just general locations. I'm gonna wait until daylight to deploy them. And I think I'm not gonna be able to play much at night, even with these lights. Even if I get another light, I don't have anything directly above. And this is too big a map to try to do this shit with. Indeed, that artillery piece was not mentioned, so I'm throwing it in there. They've actually called out the units by number, so it's an iffy thing. I gotta figure out where that Congreve is supposed to go and other stuff that I think is supposed to still be on the map or within the scenario. In terms of reinforcements, all blotted out. The French reinforcements come in early, so I get the feeling that the French probably, not knowing the battle terribly well, should be on the offensive early on. Try to get an edge before the real masses of Russian troops, etc., start coming in. There were a couple of iffy things. First of all, there were some calling out by specific unit number. Hey, this unit comes in. Sometimes, most of them were before I had to pull the unit. So like Napoleon comes in, and I kind of knew about this, with his gendarmes. It's a one-step unit. Actually, there was a mention in the rules. Because there's been a lot of fighting, etc., the both sides actually have a lot of battered units coming into this battle. They've been consolidated into units that didn't really exist, but with the idea of, well, among other things, keeping the counter mix smaller, but also so that you had functional pieces on the board. The game sort of breaks down when you get to small units because it's accounting for too many things in the abstraction of what the firepower of a unit is. It's counting things like frontage that's actually available, but also the quality of the units, and all kind of weird stuff goes into it. And the units don't reduce in firepower. So you can blow, you can take like an 8 or 9 step unit and knock it down to 1 step, and it still has full firepower, unless this had some kind of handling of that. But anyway, most of those, the individual units were called out ahead of time, but there were a couple of units of Poniatowski. I had to come in here in the dark and try to hunt those suckers down that come in later as reinforcements and are not mentioned in the Poniatowski setup. It's a little funny because some of the units where individually called out units come in late are called out specifically in the reinforcements. Others are not, It's this really loose attitude towards the whole thing, and it very much disturbs me, but whatever. Yeah. So now all I have a couple of stray units to try to figure out what's going to happen with them, how I'm going to cope with them, and I guess I bag the what if guys. It's kind of funny. Most of the games in this series have a sheet that tells you where, what all the what if units are. This one, it's got nothing. It's okay. It's not that big a deal because the only information really on here is the number of the unit and the number of steps it has and the name of the unit. They didn't prefigure the morale reduction levels. Those are covered in the standard rules for this. There are some exceptions though, like the old guard never does, but I think the young guard is just like normal units for this. Yeah, with a higher morale to begin with. Same with the other grenadiers and stuff. I feel like the later versions of the game where they baked it into the charts, they went a little bit further into defining where the various morale hits happen. For good or ill, I guess that's all I have to say. I think I've been able to figure everything out in terms of the troops. This is what? Saint-Cyr and Mouton, who are both at Dresden during the campaign, being watched by Benningsen's forces, which there's a what-if scenario that these, I guess, come in, and Benningsen comes in earlier because he wouldn't have to watch, and Tolstoy's militia comes in earlier, or comes into the game. So they're all what-if counters. The Congreve rockets, not mentioned anywhere except like in some of the historical notes, as in they are part of the Swedish force. I think I'm just going to add them. They're not going to make too much of a difference, and they add some color, man. This other unit here is referred to in one scenario on October 16th, the Thielmann Freikorps, or Freikorps. My thinking there is it may be a temporary unit that was formed out of other units. I didn't look at all the units that are deployed on the 16th. I'm going to leave that out of the game. Unlike, it has several steps, so unlike the Congreve rockets, it wouldn't just be destroyed by a hit. And I'm not going to worry about that too much. There's one more thing I need to do in addition to finishing up the actual setup, and that's look through the standard rules to see how they differ from the rule set that I've been using. Not in huge ways, but I need to understand some things like how the losses to morale are accomplished, and also what the units look like and stuff like that. So I'll come back on this video at least once more after I've kind of flipped through that and tried to figure it out. But yeah, we're getting close, man. We're getting close. It just, these games are not complete as far as any of them go, from what I can tell, and ready to play. You really have to kind of tinker around to make them work, and you're not sure if you have, you know, the correct order of battle and stuff like that. I think I've resolved everything to my satisfaction there, but yeah, it's and it's not too bad. But yeah, and I mean, you know, in a way, the basic rules are a game kit anyway. They're like, well, if you want to play the really, really most basic game, that's fine. But if you want to play anything more than that, you're worrying about, you know, pick this rule, don't pick this rule, stuff like that. I try to play with as many as I can. Also disturbing, well, we got the combat, okay. We got the combat chart there. I think the scenario book has the, in the formations as well. This will actually be more useful than the more modern one, which, well, I think there is kind of a chart sort of baked in. But the more modern one, I found myself flipping through the early part of the book regularly. I may have to bring that rule book down and compare some of the charts and tables and stuff, make sure that they all work. But yeah, I think we're actually about ready. That wasn't too bad. Given the size of it and everything, I'm not that disappointed with the amount of difficulties I had with the setup for this system. I completed the setup of the units. You got the coalition over here, the French main force over here. Since I think the French are going to be on the offensive, I've got them up in column and ready to move forward. I haven't written my orders yet. To me, that's sort of starting play. Some units in the back, Poniatowski, ready to come up, or in reserve, however you want to look at that. French start getting reinforcements on the first day. I shouldn't go into this kind of stuff. But anyway, I made my little time chart. I decided to pull down out of Hanau the more modern set of rules, mainly because I'm kind of used to them. And honestly, I looked over the rules here, and I could find no fundamental difference except, and this may already be accounted for in those guys, except that the morale decreases are listed here. The specific rules, I believe, have the army, well, it's actually morale by corps for this, which is good because there's more than one army in the game. But yeah, I think per corps morale makes a lot more sense anyway. Yeah, I kind of get the idea of the whole army breaking being a thing, but individual corps morale means that units that are beaten up, not just fatigued, but beaten up, can rest a couple of days and be ready to be thrown back in the line. The idea of, you know, the French have basically two armies. I believe the coalition has three, or is it four? let's see, we have Bohemia, Silesia, the North, and Poland. Make it 4. So, there's just huge quantities. I haven't set up my royals yet. And I still haven't figured out who's in command here, whether it's Barclay or Schwartz. But Schwarzenberg. I think it's Schwarzenberg. But I don't know what I need Barclay then for. He's at the same level. It could just be subordinate commander or whatever. These guys don't count as army commanders. There's also no promotion system here. So if one of your army commanders gets killed, I don't know what you'd do. And for that matter, there are no replacement counters in the game, which means I might have to steal some counters from, I don't know, Hanau or somewhere else. I was looking at like, hey, maybe I'll bring down the skirmishers from one of the other games. But it's a pain in the ass because I've got them sorted by nationality. So like, I was looking at the Waterloo set for skirmishers, and it just is probably easier to just use blank counters. I'll use the dummies where applicable. I checked the charts, they're the same, and otherwise I think we're ready to go. The only thing that I kind of have left to do is if I want to mark down the information from these as to where the damage points are. That's a lot of work. Whereas I could just look it up and, or copy this chart somewhere that's relatively visible to see what happens. I'm a little iffy on, there's like this rule, I don't know where the hell it is. It's as though they had already put these in, but they're not in. Oh, they are! Oh my God. So my photocopies failed. These all have the correct points of loss on them. And so those have already been accounted for. I was going to say, there's like somewhere in the notes where it says that the old guard doesn't suffer with the exception of this unit. And some other units suffer less, which may be the young guards, but they all look too small. Anything under strength 4 doesn't get affected. So yeah, I'm gonna have to do something to copy that out, because somehow my photocopy did not catch it from this. It caught it from the others. I've never been too happy with how they look on the photocopy anyway. They ended up too dark when I did it from the Hanau game. So yeah, so I do still have a little bit of clerical work left. And I write the orders and get started. And I don't know if I'll actually be moving any pieces today before it gets dark. One kind of nice thing is all the action looks like it's going to be down here, and I can probably manage to get decent light over there. It wasn't too bad here. The thing is, though, I have enough trouble reading these counters. If I don't have a good overhead, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I have a clip-on lamp, but the clip doesn't work. I found it in the trash. The light works, but the clip doesn't. And I've been hauling it around with me thinking I could jury-rig something somewhere somehow. Actually, one of the plans was to stick it in one of these table legs. Somehow that was going to work. I don't know how that was going to happen. But yeah, we'll give that a shot. So I'll send this up. This is just the setup. It doesn't tell you anything about the rolls. It doesn't tell you anything. It's just, when I did some of the smaller ones, I had a lot of grousing about the setup. Well, I figured I'd grouse about the setup in larger quantities with this, because there's more effort that had to be done, including just setting up the damn tables to hold the thing. I mean, that was probably the hardest part, to be honest. because most of my tables, I have 6 of these suckers, and 3 were in use, 3 had to be reassembled. And they all came down, and then I had the fold out. This is the fold out from upstairs. I have more tables, but I could not reasonably add them to anything. So I have my work table, and there's a table down the basement for gaming that and both of them are about the same height as these guys. Better fits than that is. But that one, the one that's down the basement is really a pain in the ass to move, and the other one maybe a little easier to move, but I got all, I have it set up in my room for my work. The only other thing I might be able to pull off is I could have gotten some extension on that. I think that's close to the same height, but that might be problematic. I think it may be a little too high. Anyway, I got that thing. Hey, that might have actually been better than this. Maybe. All right. Yeah, I'm just delaying. Oh, hi. Hi. I put out sunflower seeds. Every time I see the squirrel, I'll put sunflower seeds. I often see him eating my sunflower seeds. Yep. All right, that's enough.